What's going on, guys? In this video I want to talk about CleanSpark, Bitcoin, and where I think things are going. We're mostly going to look at the charts here, but I'm also going to give you my projections on CleanSpark and just give you some historical details about their revenue. So let's get into this video. Sorry if you hear my dishwasher in the background. It's my one day off, so I'm trying to take advantage of getting some things done. But let's take a look at CleanSpark and then take a look at Bitcoin. So first off, CleanSpark. We're somewhat flat today, down almost 1%. Bitcoin pulled down under 26,000 last night and then kind of recovered a bit, but it's been kind of a snooze fest, at least with the stocks that I've been watching today in the market, with exception of Nano Dimension that actually went up like 5% on an announcement of share buybacks. And if you're interested in that, check out my previous video. But looking at CleanSpark, we are now trading under all three EMAs here. We are under the 50 EMA, but we are still holding above the 200. And I do think if we pull back more, we will for sure be testing it. But before testing the 200 EMA, we will likely test this blue line. You can see that there are points that it utilizes as a support, as a bouncing off point. As Bitcoin's been slowly going higher in price since the beginning of the year, CleanSpark has been as well. And it's been utilizing this sort of trend line. It's found it as resistance before, it's found it as support before, resistance again, support. So I will be watching for it and seeing if we can test it as support again, maybe bounce off of it. I'm still extremely bullish on Bitcoin, and we continue to get closer to the halving. We are only months away. To me, any pullbacks right now are certainly buying opportunities for both Bitcoin and CleanSpark, along with some other favorite Bitcoin miners. So of course, I'm unsure on the short term where Bitcoin's gonna go, where CleanSpark's gonna go, but there are some levels to watch for if CleanSpark starts pulling back a little more. And I will show you in a second why I think Bitcoin is ready to start trying to push back upwards here. But before that, you might notice, these numbers down at the bottom of my screen here. So let's zoom out a bit, and I wanna show you a bit of a timeline where revenue is concerned. So back here, if you remember, back when CleanSpark was a microgrid company, there are probably not many of you that remember this, but if you do remember back when they were solely a microgrid company and just starting to talk about Bitcoin, let me know in the comments below. That means you're a real OG. But back here in 2019, 2020, CleanSpark was, just pulling hundreds of thousands, if not just starting to pull in $1 million. They started getting into Bitcoin, started seeing very nice revenue growth. And remember, because this is a stock on the market, you have to wait for earnings to come out. Bitcoin does whatever it wants to do. So some of these earnings are based on, months ago. But you can see that as CleanSpark was dropping in price, as Bitcoin was starting to drastically drop in price, they got to a peak of $41 million in revenue in the last Bitcoin cycle, which is right around 40 times the money they were making back in 2019, early 2020. I would argue that they have definitely made the right choice in becoming purely a Bitcoin miner. And I do see in the near future, hundreds of millions of dollars coming in revenue per quarter. This upcoming earnings, they are expecting 57 million in revenue. This might drop a bit considering that right after earnings, Bitcoin started dropping quite a bit from that $29,000 area. So we'll see where that goes. I do think at the very least, we'll see more than $45 million in the quarter we're in. 45 million was the revenue they reported last quarter, but I do expect them to at least beat that 45 million, see another record-breaking revenue, even if it isn't that 57 million expected. And soon in coming quarters, as Bitcoin catches back up, as Bitcoin starts rallying into the halving, we will hit that $100 million quarter mark. And subsequently, profitability. They lost $14 million in the quarter they just reported, and I do think in the current quarter we're in, we're going to be somewhere around under a $10 million loss, which to me shows extreme progress. As Bitcoin starts moving up in price, this company is going to be profitable for the majority of Bitcoin's coming bull cycle. But I'm extremely bullish on this chart. Despite it pulling back a bit, I think now is a great entry point on CleanSpark. And if you don't want to be involved with the ebbs and flows of the short term, I think it's also a great option to just simply DCA if you don't want to worry about the upwards and downwards moves and you just want to kind of level it out, buy over time. I think now is a great buying opportunity, and I find it extremely unlikely that we would face a death cross, which would mean us dropping under the 200 EMA, under 350, and staying down there for a while, dropping even more and having these two lines, the red and green line, crossing. I find that extremely unlikely, and I really like making use of these long-term indicators, the 250 EMA cross. And for some context, looking back in the previous Bitcoin rally, CleanSpark had its golden cross, and it never flipped again until Bitcoin started to finally pull back from 69K all the way down to 15,000. After CleanSpark's golden cross and huge rally that followed, CleanSpark finally saw its death cross back in late 2021, and this kind of confirmed or defined the beginning of the bear market. After this point, it's been pretty much in a downtrend. But just based on the timeline in history, you can see that when CleanSpark has its golden cross right before the Bitcoin halving, typically it continues running and doesn't flip back bearish. I do expect this run to continue despite maybe pulling back to the low fours along the way. Now looking at Bitcoin, it's bearish on the EMAs. It is now under all three. However, they haven't all flipped yet. But be on the lookout. If we do see the yellow flip the red, which would be the 50 to the 200, that may mean we're pulling back even further. But Bitcoin has been trying so hard to maintain 26. I see 25,000 as an insanely important level. It was previously a bouncing off point before we just broke through it and fell very hard, and it became resistance. Now I do think 25k will play out as support for Bitcoin, but I could always be wrong. And if I am wrong, that means Bitcoin's falling harder and CleanSpark's falling harder. But I just don't see it. Now looking at the MAs, Bitcoin is under both the 50 and 200 moving average. However, they are still bullish. They have not crossed back yet. If Bitcoin falls drastically, they may likely cross, and it may cause some more fear. But based on timeline, I don't personally see that happening. Another thing I want to show you guys is Bitcoin is still pretty oversold on the RSI. And looking at the MACD, it does look like it's gearing up to cross. Meaning if we do have a push up, I think it will be a drastic move up. Bitcoin has a lot of room to run from this oversold territory to being overbought. And also the MACD has a lot of distance to go to the upside as well. Based on how little time we have coming up to the halving, I do think any short-term pullbacks are great buying opportunities. You can see in previous halvings, as we approach it, you see a nice move up in the months preceding the halving. But let me know where you guys think Bitcoin and CleanSpark is going for the short term. I think a lot of the drop has already happened. I don't think we're dropping much more. We may, however, see an accelerated move down if Bitcoin does break 25k. But I personally find it kind of unlikely. A lot of indicators are pointing to a bounce soon. And based on the fact that CleanSpark is going to continue to expect increased revenue as they increase that exahash, get more Bitcoin miners online, I think we are looking at a great buying opportunity. But let me know in the comments below, how do you feel about CleanSpark right now? How do you feel about Bitcoin? And are you preparing for the halving, which is only a few months away? Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll catch you a bit later.